It's good to be back with you for our weekly St. Mark Spark. We are traveling through the story together as St. Mark and as our in-person and online community. This last week we were in chapter 5. In chapter 5, it is a chapter focusing on Exodus, the middle parts of Exodus, and the giving of the law and the Ten Commandments for the Israelites, and also about the tabernacle. The Israelites are trying to discover exactly who they are, what their identity is, and moreover, it's a story of God who is trying to provide guardrails for them, trying to give them signs that say these are the things that will lead to a productive life, a life that is filled and bountiful. And conversely, these are the mistakes to avoid that will cause harm to yourselves and will cause harm to others and offense to God. I told the joke last week, not always the funniest jokes pastors tell, but I think this one was pretty good. The question is, what is the difference between a good lawyer and a great lawyer? Well, the answer is a good lawyer knows the law and a great lawyer knows the judge. So in the Ten Commandments, we have the law. We have 10 commandments. The first 4 deal with our relationship with God, and the next 6 deal with our relationship with one another. In the first 4, we hear about making sure we have no other gods before the one God, before the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of history, the God of the Israelites. And then we hear that there shall be no idols, no idolatry. We hear about not taking the Lord's name in vain, and we hear also, finally, about keeping the Sabbath and what that looks like. The next 6 deal with our relationship with one another, and that is to honor our mother and our father, to not murder, to not steal, to not covet, and the list goes on. So we have the joke going back to it. It's one thing, a good life, a good lawyer knows the law. A good follower of Christ, a good Christian knows the law. But if that is just where we stop, then we have missed out on a much bigger and grander plan that God has for our lives. A great lawyer knows the judge. A great follower of Christ knows the eternal judge, the one who has the power of creation, the power of redemption, the power of sustaining us in our most difficult times, holding us when our hearts are broken, pulling us and calling us back to be in community, to be faithful and to be honest with each other, even when we know we have missed the mark, when we have broken the law, when we have sinned. So the Ten Commandments lay out the foundations of how the Israelites are supposed to live, in many ways how we're supposed to live moving forward. A lot of folks will want to have statues created of the Ten Commandments or have them displayed in schools, and I think that fundamentally misses the point. To have something etched in stone, to have something on public display, in many ways, it lets the rock do our thinking for us, our living for us, our discipleship, and faithfully following the Lord for us. We are never called simply to live lives that are immobile like a monument in front of a courthouse. We are supposed to write these laws not on stone, but write them on our hearts, write them in our hearts so that we live them out, but also live them out with joy. You know, anytime the church talks about sin or the law, or money for that matter, some folks will turn off and say, well, I've heard this before, and this is just fitting the stereotype of what the church is about. And I think to do that and see things that way misses the opportunity for abundant joy that God offers us in following the law, in staying inside the guardrails, and seeing the road signs and paying attention to them when there is danger ahead, when there is trouble possibly in front of us. The law is a wonderful thing. The psalmist talks about how lovely is your law, how wonderful is your law. I meditate on it day and night. And in doing so, I am like a well-watered tree. While so many of the people around us might not follow it, there might be even the withering of their leaves and the lack of abundance in their lives. Those who follow God's law, those are like those trees that have those strong and deep roots. There are a lot of laws in the Old Testament. A lot of laws that we go through, starting with the 10 in Exodus chapter 20 and Deuteronomy 5. There are a lot of other laws we hear about in Leviticus and other places. And in many ways, sometimes the law can become a burden because it's not just the initial law, but it is an interpretation of that law and further interpretations of those interpretations. By the time it got to Jesus, it was too much. And Jesus chastised those people who were so concerned with the law that they lacked the ability to see the relationship with God and with one another, which was right in front of them. He said that you keep adding to the law, but you don't even lift a finger to lift up the burden of the widow or of the orphan or of, frankly, those who have grown poor and tired in heart and spirit. Jesus had his last meal with his disciples, and at that meal, which we celebrate on Maundy, Thursday, he said, I'm giving you a new commandment. That's how we get the word Maundy. It's just the word for mandate or commandment. I give you a new commandment, one commandment above all others, and that is to love one another the way I have loved you. To love one another the way I have loved you, to follow my example. Now, that mandate means a couple things for us. The first one is to know that we are loved. We are loved wholly and completely. We are getting closer and closer to Lent in this time of penitence and this time of looking inside of our own lives to test our roots and to see if our leaves are in bloom. We're getting closer to that time, but it is a reminder as we get closer to that is that we are loved wholly and completely. Totally loved by God. I hope you feel that today. And more than that, since we are so loved by God, that we are free to love others. And so what I encourage you is look through the 10 Commandments. Remind yourself, study those, but write them on your heart and see them through the lens of this final last commandment that Jesus gave us, to love each other the way that Jesus loved us and loves us still. And so, in seeing the law through those lenses, to live out the law with joy. Because we, as followers of Christ in the new covenant, we are no longer under the burden of the law, meaning we do not have to do the law in order to get God to love us. It's an important point. We are free from the law, but it is incomplete if we don't see the second part of that point, which is we are now free for the law, to do the law joyfully because God in Jesus Christ already loves us. So may we write that on our hearts, but also may we live it out with our lives as we joyfully seek to follow the Lord. I pray that you are blessed this week. We will look forward to Pastor Carol preaching this Saturday night and Sunday here at St. Mark. There's a lot of things that are going on with the chili supper and activities for children, saints, and siblings later on. Please take note of all these things at www.discoverstmark.org. And of course, you can obviously follow us and always follow us at our Facebook channel. Pray that you are blessed this week as we go into chapter 6 of the story. We talk about wandering and what that looks like. And may you be blessed this week as we seek to follow the law, but always do so in love.